In this episode, pages of history, how Mussolini dropped bombs on Gibraltar and what came out of it, tactics and strategy, a new method of penetration calculation, how does it work, and metal beasts, the first Soviet supersonic jet. In one of our previous episodes, we discussed the excellent Super Sabre. Now, it's time to speak about its biggest rival, the first ever Soviet supersonic aircraft. Here it comes. The majestic MiG-19 PT, the Soviet production supersonic jet designed at Mikoyan and Gurevich Design Bureau. Let's take a closer look. The first thing you notice is its design. It's very representative of its class, with a highly swept wing and the overall sleek look. The aircraft has a wingspan of roughly 9 meters. It is 13 meters long and almost 4 meters high. If you compare it to the Super Sabre, the Soviet jet has a noticeably smaller frame. Thanks to its relatively low weight, it's around 2 times lighter. This fighter has an incredibly high rate of climb, 140 meters per second. The twin-engine combination allows for some amazing thrust. At an altitude of 10,000 meters, the MiG can almost reach the speed of 1,400 kph. Furthermore, even if one of your engines is taken out, you can still make it to the airfield with the remaining one. To make it easier to land, or to force enemies to overshoot, the jet comes equipped with an air brake. You can use takeoff flaps or landing flaps. Your protected fuel tanks are housed right below the engine and behind the pilot's seat. The ammunition for the duo of fearsome 30mm NR-30 cannons is stored in the wings. And when it comes to secondary armaments, you get 2 air-to-air missiles. Yeah, just 2. That's it. More than enough for a light interceptor, though. In combat, you should prioritize hunting down enemy aircraft. Yes, it's true that this jet has access to a good AP belt with nice penetration capabilities, but that doesn't mean that you should switch to ground targets. The fact is that it's aerial combat where your guns really shine. They have a 1-second burst mass of 13.5 kilos. Shoot in bursts, and you need to land only one good hit to literally tear an enemy plane apart. In Air RB, always make a point of taking your missiles with you. Rely on cannons when engaging enemies at close range, and use missiles to hit anything that's more than 1 or 2 clicks away. It's important to stay in a horizontal plane at the moment of launch, or your seeker will fail to acquire a target and subsequently won't launch at all. Start climbing at the very beginning of the match. The crazy rate of climb is one of your biggest advantages when facing the likes of the Super Sabre. At the same time, it doesn't really pay to go too fast. Thanks to a subpar rudder at high speeds, you'll most likely have difficulty controlling your flight and aiming at targets. And that's the best-case scenario. Always keep in mind that this is a rather fragile aircraft which can't be flown recklessly. Be very careful with high-G maneuvers. Your wing can't take more than 10 Gs. Go over that, and it'll be ripped off. It's easy to get overexcited when first flying a supersonic jet. Do not get carried away. Also, be wary of overheating your engines. Stop using afterburners for a while, and the temperatures will quickly go back to normal. All in all, the MiG-19 PT is a great aircraft, with a narrow area of expertise. It's very strong in air battles. Leave those pesky ground targets to your teammates. The story goes that when Italy joined the war, it felt more like a nuisance to the leaders of the Reich. Top brass in Berlin weren't expecting much from their Italian allies, and they were soon proven to be right, as the Germans had to dispatch forces to assist the Italians in Greece and northern Africa. It didn't prevent Mussolini from dreaming about establishing a new Roman Empire, though. He still planned to turn the entirety of the Mediterranean Sea into the Great Italy's domestic waters. Well, you should be careful for what you wish. Allies finally noticed his efforts. On the 1st of November 1940, Allied forces dropped bombs on the port of Naples. That's from where the first batch of Rommel tanks were getting ready to be transported to Libya. Obviously, this was unforgivable. Mussolini had to have his revenge on those cocky Tommies, somehow. But how? Dropping bombs on Palestine didn't help at all. Then, Gibraltar it was, the key to the Mediterranean Sea. The problem was that, as the Italians soon found out, the only aircraft at their disposal capable of making it as far as Gibraltar were the SM-82 transport aircraft. Well, what could you do? With planes like this, the Italians literally traveled thousands of kilometers to drop a couple of 100-kilogram bombs. What was especially infuriating was that during those raids, impudent Brits didn't black out their port. Truth be told, they didn't even issue air raid warnings. But then, the Italian air forces weren't completely powerless. They finally had the bleeding-edge Piaggio P-108 strategic bomber on their hands, a true marvel of technology, which had already driven a number of engineers close to madness, and even claimed the life of Bruno Mussolini, a capable pilot and son of the dictator. Even the maintenance of the P-108 turned out to be so troublesome that the only elite unit flying these machines became semi-operational only by the summer of 1942. Finally, during the evening of the 28th of June, the unit consisting of the entire might of the Italian strategic bombers was ready to take off. All 5 of them. And then it went just as expected. One bomber suffered engine malfunction and, consequently, had to drop its bombs into the sea, and in 20 minutes was forced to return to base. The other 4 made it to Gibraltar under the cover of night, only to discover that they didn't have enough fuel for the trip back. Only one bomber, led by an experienced commander called Castellani, successfully made it to Sardinia, basically running on fumes. Another bomber managed to find its way to the Spanish base of Palma de Mallorca, where it was promptly refueled by Francoists and then asked to leave. The other 2 priceless aircraft had to contend with an emergency landing in Spain and flew no more, with their crew forced to return to Italy by other means. Of course, Mussolini claimed that the operation was a tremendous success, leaving the Brits a bit confused because during the night, not even a single bomb fell on the grounds of the British base. Where did they all go remains a mystery to this very day. Anyway, the raid was over. The Italians returned to their other high-priority projects, like building a few more P-108s. And when we say a few more, that's exactly what we mean. The Italian factories only managed to build but a few more P-108s before the war ended. All the while across the ocean, the Americans were busy churning out a 4-engine bomber every single hour. Some time ago, we introduced significant changes to the way penetration works in our game. A lot of you heard about it, but still not many people know why it happened and what changed exactly. It's simple. Before now, we had to set up performance values for every round, manually using historical documents and data from manufacturers. but there were often many different sources giving us conflicting information. The more rounds we introduced into the game, the more discrepancies we had to deal with. That's why we decided to use the experience we accumulated throughout those years of studying data to analyze and summarize it to create a new universal calculation method, which will be more accurate, consequently less prone to error, and at the same time more transparent to our players. Now the thickness of armor that can be penetrated by both high-caliber armor-piercing and sub-caliber AP rounds will be calculated using the DeMar equation. For example, the BR-365A APH-EBC fired from an 85mm D5T cannon could penetrate up to 142mm of armor before. Now, with a refined formula, it can only punch through 135mm. That's because this time the game doesn't just account for the weight of the round, it also accounts for the ratio of explosives to the weight of the round. At the same time, an AP round fired from a 100mm SA-47 gun can now pierce through more than 290mm of armor at a right angle, thanks to its design and its high velocity. And you don't have to memorize that. Now, if you know the mass of the round and its muzzle velocity and are aware of its design, you can calculate penetration rates yourself, including for the rounds that aren't even implemented yet. It's a bit trickier with AP-FSDS rounds. Their penetration values are to be calculated according to the Lance-Odermatt formula. It also accounts for a number of additional parameters, including the length of the projectile nose, the length and the diameter of the penetrator, the material used to build the round, and a number of others. This formula is great for calculating the performance of rounds like the DM-23 or the DM-33. Lastly, we also improved the method of penetration calculation for hits at different angles. With a new system in place, it's now generally more difficult to pierce armor when hitting at a wide angle, and easier when a round hits a plate at around 90 degrees. To put it simply, angling will be more effective than it is now. Of course, one or two formulae can't describe all the various rounds created by engineers of many different countries throughout dozens of years. For instance, for the time being, we'll still use the old system for a number of specific rounds, such as the Soviet 3BM-22. Sub-caliber rounds with a discarding sub-O also require a different approach. This is a work in progress. We will keep you updated. Keep your eyes peeled. A player with a curious name of Gold Play Button with no videos suggests that we should do a triathlon looking for the best 5.7 medium tank. Thanks, that's a good idea. We're certainly writing that down. We're really glad that you enjoy this segment of our show. The second question comes from a user JA5204. It's rather short. Plain triathlon? Well, it certainly can happen. What do you think? What kind of tests should we have for aircraft to allow us to find objectively better planes while still making it interesting to watch? Any suggestions? Then there is a question coming from Scottish Koala. Hey Bruce, are you ever tempted to spoil what's coming when a shooting range comment asks you? Tongue out. Of course. But every single time when there is a when or a will you in one of your questions, a producer of the game, as well as two armed guards, magically appear behind my back. The company is very strict with its secrets, but I will keep trying. Maybe one day I'll be able to somehow slip you a piece of paper or something with all the secrets on it? Shh. Careful. Cédric Gavion writes, I really like this series. It is very informative. So I wondered if you can make an episode on bombing in Tank RB. Well, to put it simply, you just have to drop bombs on top of your enemies and explode the ever-living hell out of them. On a slightly more serious note, if that's something that a lot of you are interested in, we will certainly make a guide like that sometime down the line. The next question was written by Zocker Twins. Does a kinetic energy round have more penetration when you are flying towards it? Of course, in our game, like IRL, speeds are added when objects are going in opposite directions. So flying into an enemy burst is more dangerous than flying out of it. Then there is a message by Adrian Dumbrava. Finally, I'm getting a new computer and I can play War Thunder again after a year and a half. Congratulations on the new PC, Adrian. We're glad to have you back. There is a ton of new, exciting stuff waiting for you there. Well, that's all for today. That was The Shooting Range by Gaijin Entertainment. Subscribe to this channel. Press that bell button to receive a notification when a new video pops up. Leave a like, and most importantly, tell us what you think in the comments below. See you in a week.